You ever get a phone call that feels like someone reached into your chest and yanked your past into the present? That's what it felt like when my cousin Mia called last November. I was 38, living alone in a sleek little condo in Brooklyn. Park Slope, if you want to get specific. Cybersecurity developer by day, introvert by nature, and emotionally estranged from my entire family by necessity. It had been 5 years since I left Seattle and never looked back. 5 long, necessary years. I hadn't spoken to anyone from North Seattle since my mom's birthday in 2018, and that conversation ended with me crying in the bathroom of a Vietnamese restaurant while my brother mocked me for not being fun like I used to be. So when Mia's name popped up on my phone, someone who hadn't texted me in half a decade, I let it ring. Then again, 3 times back to back before I gave in. She said they wanted me home for Christmas. She made it sound simple, like it was no big deal. Like coming home was just hopping a flight and forgetting everything that ever happened in that house. Like I could just drop back and like I was never called a corporate sellout or a wannabe hacker over dinner. Like the years of condescension and subtle digs could be erased with one family photo around a decorated tree. I almost said no, but then she said something that hooked me in a way I wasn't ready for. She said my dad had been asking about me. That man hadn't so much as written my name in a birthday card in years. Hearing that he asked about me, even vaguely, made something inside me ache. Stupid, right? But we're all wired for that hope, even when it's poisoned. So yeah, I said yes. I booked the flight, packed a single carry-on, and promised myself I wouldn't stay longer than 4 days. What happened in those 4 days still makes my stomach turn. Landing in Seattle was like stepping into a memory I didn't want to remember. The air smelled like damp cedar and unresolved tension. I hadn't set foot in North Seattle since I walked out of my parents' house after my brother called my promotion lucky timing, and my mom nodded like she agreed. Mia picked me up at Seattle Tacoma. Her car smelled like vanilla and old cheerleader perfume, a scent that instantly made me 17 again, sitting in the back of her Civic while she tried to explain why our family didn't mean it that way. She was the only one who ever tried, and I give her credit for that. But even she fell in line eventually. We made small talk on the drive. My job, her kids, how Uncle Bob's heart surgery went. Like we weren't tiptoeing around a minefield of old wounds. She asked if I was still in cybersecurity, like I hadn't just hit a 6-figure bonus last quarter. I said I was doing fine and left it at that. The house looked exactly the same. Same beige siding, same wind chime that always got tangled, same dead hydrangeas. I felt like I was walking into a diorama of my own resentment. Inside, it was chaos. Cousins I didn't recognize. Kids screaming. Someone's toddler was using the hallway rug as a napkin. And then there they were, my parents. Gray-haired, tense-smiled, like aging mannequins posed for a family catalog they never quite belonged in. My mom hugged me like she was proud of herself for tolerating me. My dad gave me a firm pat on the back, the kind you give to coworkers you don't really like but need to acknowledge at the company picnic. And my brother? He sauntered in 10 minutes later like he was the star of the show. I could already feel the countdown clock in my head. For days. Just get through 4 days. What I didn't know then was that day 2 would flip everything upside down. It was the second day when the real performance began. I'd woken up early, partly because of jet lag and partly because the guest bed had the same mattress I remember from high school. Thin, stiff, and just slightly judgmental. I walked into the kitchen to find my mom already bustling around like Martha Stewart on a deadline. She greeted me with that brittle smile. The one that says she's trying really hard not to bring up politics or my life choices. I offered to help with breakfast. She said I could just sit and relax, but the way she said it made it sound more like an order than an invitation. So I sat, quietly, watching her stir batter and judge me in equal measure. Then came my brother. Of course, still in pajama pants at 10:30, yawning like he'd just solved world peace in his dreams. He gave me that little chin lift thing he does, too lazy for a proper greeting, and wandered straight to the fridge. What caught me off guard was what happened next. He sat down, picked at some eggs my mom had just finished plating, and casually dropped a comment about how tech folks like me must be doing fine these days. I nodded, not taking the bait. Then he asked if I was still renting. I looked up and said, no, I own my place. A condo in Park Slope. Bought last year. That's when the air in the room shifted. My mom turned from a sink. My brother actually paused mid-bite. It was like someone had flipped a switch, and suddenly I wasn't just the weirdo with a keyboard. I was someone worth noticing. I mentioned, without ceremony, that I'd gotten a 6-figure bonus last quarter. You would have thought I'd announced I had a royal title or something. My dad, who hadn't made eye contact with me for more than 10 seconds since I landed, leaned in, and asked what kind of cybersecurity I did exactly. And just like that, I was interesting again. But deep down, I knew what that shift in tone meant. They smelled opportunity. The rest of that day felt fake. Suddenly, my mom wanted to know all about Brooklyn. My dad asked about cyber stuff with a kind of forced enthusiasm that reminded me of middle school science fairs. Even my brother tried to act curious, like we were just two siblings catching up and not two people who hadn't spoken since he called me emotionally exhausting. But I played along. I smiled through it. I even showed them pictures of my condo. I told myself it was fine, that maybe people really could change, that maybe I'd misjudged them. I hadn't. That night, after dinner, meatloaf and microwave peas, as nostalgic as they were bland, I was sitting in the living room sipping wine out of a reindeer mug when it happened. My brother cleared his throat. He said he wanted to talk to me real quick. That's never good. I followed him into the garage, which still smelled like motor oil and disappointment. He leaned against the workbench, arms crossed like he was rehearsing a pitch. And that's exactly what it turned out to be. He started talking about his startup idea. Something about smart home tech with a green twist. He was vague, buzzwordy, and clearly had no prototype. But he did have an investor deck, printed out and stapled like that made it legit. He told me he needed $25,000 to get it off the ground. I stood there, stunned, holding that flimsy packet of promises. He said, with a half smile, that it wouldn't even be a big deal for me. I was killing it in tech after all. And that's when it all snapped back into focus. This wasn't about reconnecting. It never was. This was about money. It was always about money. The family I wasn't good enough for 5 years ago suddenly saw me as useful. I handed the packet back without a word and walked inside. And if I had any doubt about what came next, that was the moment it vanished. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay awake in that stiff guest bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself that I was overreacting, that maybe he was just naive, that maybe it wasn't as calculated as it felt. But it was. The next morning, they were all in the kitchen pretending nothing had happened. My mom asked if I wanted coffee. My dad read the paper. My brother scrolled his phone like he hadn't just asked me to fund his dream while never once asking how I'd been surviving on my own all these years. I sat down at the table and said I had an answer about the money. My mom perked up. My brother looked up with that smug little glimmer in his eye like he already knew I'd cave. I said no. No, I wasn't giving him $25,000. No, I wasn't going to be their emergency exit, their safety net, their golden goose, just because I'd finally found a life that worked for me. And no, I wasn't going to explain myself. Silence. You'd think I'd dropped a grenade on the kitchen tile. My dad cleared his throat and muttered something about family helping family. My mom tried the guilt route, asking if I'd really come all this way just to say no. My brother tried to laugh it off, said I didn't have to be so cold. I stood up, finished my coffee, and said I was going for a walk. I didn't come back. I didn't pack. I didn't say goodbye. I was called a rideshare, grabbed my purse, and walked out the front door while they were still sitting in that kitchen pretending everything was fine. The driver didn't ask questions, just nodded when I said Seattle-Tacoma. I changed my flight at the airport. It cost more than I wanted, but less than the emotional toll of staying even one more night. I sat at the gate in silence, my phone buzzing with texts I didn't open. Missed calls. 1 from mom, 2 from my brother, a voicemail from my dad I didn't even listen to. It's funny. You wait your whole life to hear your family acknowledge your worth. And when it finally happens, it comes with a price tag. When I landed in New York, I took a cab straight home. My condo smelled like rosemary and peace. I curled up on my couch with takeout and didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because this time I knew I was done. Not mad, not vindictive, just done. People talk a lot about chosen family, like it's some cliche. But walking into my quiet apartment, shoes off, laptop charging, sun setting over the brownstones, I finally got it. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is burn the bridge they keep dragging you across. You'd think walking away would be the end of it. It wasn't. 3 days after I got back to Brooklyn, the email started. First from my mom, short, clipped, almost like she was trying to sound composed, but couldn't quite pull it off. She wrote that she was disappointed and hurt that I would leave like that, without explanation, and make the holidays about me. About me. As if 5 years of silence, years of being the family's punchline, had never happened. She ended the message with, "We just want what's best for everyone. Please think about that." Then came my brother's message. Long rambling, self-pitying. He talked about how starting a business is hard, how not everyone gets handed success, how he thought I, of all people, would understand. He said he wasn't asking out of entitlement. He was asking because I was family, because that's what family does. And then, The line that made my jaw clench. If the roles were reversed, I'd help you in a heartbeat. Except that wasn't true. He never helped anyone but himself. Not when I was drowning in student loans. Not when I was working 60-hour weeks while he still lived at home. Not when I moved across the country and nobody even asked if I'd made it safely. They only noticed I existed when I became useful. I didn't reply. I didn't block them either. I just let sit. I read their words and felt nothing but a cold, quiet clarity. The next week, my dad emailed too. That one caught me off guard. We were never close. His version of affection was nodding slightly when I entered a room, but he reached out, said he was sorry I felt hurt. Not sorry for what they did, but sorry for my reaction. He said he hoped we could move past this. Move past what? The years of belittling? The way they treated my life like a placeholder until my brother figured us out? The fact that I was only worth listening to when I had something they could take? No, there was no moving past it. The truth is, when I left Seattle 5 years ago, I wasn't just putting miles between us. I was drawing a line in the sand. And for 5 years, they pretended that line wasn't real. They waited for me to come back, to fall into place, to play my part without complaint. But I didn't come back to play along. I came back to see if anything had changed. And it had. Me. The silence that followed was different this time. Not the kind that comes with distance or apathy. This was deliberate. I wasn't ignoring them out of spite. I was done performing. Done translating my success into something they could tolerate. Done playing the quiet, safe version of myself they'd always preferred. And for once, the quiet didn't hurt. It felt clean. Sharp around the edges, sure, but honest. Like rinsing out a deep wound and letting it breathe. The first weekend back, I walked through Prospect Park alone. No headphones. Just the sound of kids laughing in the distance and the gravel crunching under my boots. I thought about how many years I spent shrinking myself to fit their version of me. The too sensitive one. The too ambitious one. The one who thinks she's better than everyone just because she moved away. I had tried so hard to be digestible to people who never even tried to understand me. The memory that kept surfacing, oddly enough, wasn't from this visit. It was from when I was 19. The first time I told my family I wanted to work in tech. My brother laughed so hard he choked on his soda. My mom asked, without a hint of irony, if that meant I'd be fixing printers. And my dad? He said it was fine, as long as I didn't expect to make real money. That line stuck with me for years. Real money. Funny how now, when I am making it, suddenly I'm not a joke. I'm an opportunity. But I didn't leave to prove anything to them. I left to survive. And now I get to live. In Brooklyn, I'm not anyone's disappointment. I'm just me. I go to my job, come home to my own space, pour my own wine, and feel, for the first time in a long time, like I'm not waiting for permission to exist. I don't tell this part of the story often, because it's quiet. It doesn't end in confrontation or redemption. There's no neat ribbon, no family reconciliation. Just space, just freedom, just breath. Sometimes, walking away isn't dramatic. Sometimes it's just necessary. About a month after I got back, a letter showed up at my condo. Handwritten, in my mother's cursive, the kind she used on holiday cards, back when we still pretended everything was fine. The envelope wasn't postmarked. Someone had dropped it off in person. There was no return address, but I knew immediately who it was from. Inside, it was 5 pages long. The first page was what you'd expect. Guilt dressed up as concern. She wrote that the family missed me, that they were just worried about my emotional state, that maybe I'd misinterpreted what happened in Seattle. That word, misinterpreted, felt like a slap. Like 5 pages of rewriting history had just begun. Page 2 was about my brother. How he'd always looked up to me and just didn't know how to ask for help the right way. She wrote that he was embarrassed now, that he felt rejected, that I should consider how hard it must be for him. I actually laughed at that one, out loud, alone in my living room, letter trembling in my hands, laughing like someone who'd seen the inside of the joke and realized they were the punchline all along. Page 3 pivoted to my dad. He was quiet, she said, but hurting too, that he didn't know how to say it, but he wants to reconnect. Once. Not once did she say that anyone was sorry. Not once did she admit what actually happened. Page 4 was the plea. Let's start fresh. She suggested a summer trip, just the 4 of us. Somewhere neutral like Tahoe. Like a vacation could undo years of distance, of silence, of conditional love disguised as tradition. And then page 5. Page 5 was where it shifted. Not in tone, in strategy. She wrote that she and my dad were reviewing their estate plans, that they wanted to be fair, that they hoped everyone would be part of the future. It was subtle, but not subtle enough. This wasn't reconciliation. It was leverage. I put the letter back in the envelope. Didn't tear it. Didn't burn it. Just placed in the drawer with the others. Birthday cards, holiday invites, old attempts to pull me back in. I didn't reply, because that was never really the point. The strangest part? I think they still believe they're the good guys. Even now, even after all this, they think I'm being dramatic, cold, punishing. They think I'm choosing pride over family, that I'm nursing old wounds instead of healing them. But what they never saw, what they refused to see, was how much I gave up trying. Years of biting my tongue, years of second-guessing myself, years of showing up anyway, of calling first, of sending birthday gifts that were never acknowledged, of flying across the country for holidays that ended in tears in airport bathrooms. They remember me leaving. They never remember what pushed me to go. I don't say this with bitterness. I say it with a kind of exhausted peace, like someone who's finally stopped screaming into a room where no one ever turned around to listen. It's not revenge. It's not silence laced with poison. It's just done. And I think what scares them most, what truly unsettles them, is that I didn't break down. I didn't yell. I didn't rage or throw ultimatums. I didn't ask for anything. I just left. I chose myself. And maybe that's what they can't forgive. Because I'm not the girl they remember anymore. I'm not the one who used to apologize just to keep the peace. Not the one who smiled through backhanded compliments and let my accomplishments be minimized so someone else could feel bigger in the room. I'm not the one who tolerates anymore. I'm the one who got out. And when you get out, really out, it changes you. You stop asking what you did wrong. You stop trying to explain why your hurt matters. You stop looking for approval from people who only love you when you're small enough not to threaten them. I don't want revenge. I want peace. And for the first time, I have it. Not perfectly. Not every day. Some nights, I still lie awake and wonder if I'll ever fully stop wanting to be loved by people who never learned how. But wanting and needing are two different things. And I've finally stopped needing it. The last time I heard from any of them was 6 months ago. A cousin's wedding. One of the younger ones. I wasn't invited, but someone tagged me in a photo on social media. One of those big family group shots with everyone squeezed in a frame, grinning like life had never cracked a seam. In the comments, someone asked where I was. No one answered. Just a few likes. A heart emoji. Silence. That's when I realized they'd already erased me. Quietly. No drama. No questions. Just omitted. I didn't cry. I didn't message anyone. I just stared at that photo longer than I meant to, trying to understand what it meant to not be missed, not even enough to be mentioned. And still, I didn't regret leaving. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from people who only recognize your value when it benefits them. And you know what? There's a certain power in not being invited. There's clarity in absence. I've built something since then. Not just a life, a self. A version of me that isn't edited to fit a family script. Friends who don't flinch when I speak my mind. Coworkers who respect what I do without needing me to shrink. A home where I don't have to brace myself before walking through the door. Freedom doesn't always look like fireworks. Sometimes it looks like a quiet morning in your own kitchen with your favorite mug in your hand and nobody expecting anything from you but truth. There's no final confrontation in this story. No apology email. No weepy reunion at an airport gate. Just me. Still here. Still standing. Still whole.